Milo Finch learned to read the night sky long before he knew the alphabet. Every evening, after the dishes were cleared and his mother tucked him in, he lay beneath a quilt his grandmother had sewn midnight, hooped squares stitched with threads that glittered silvery white. The lights were not sequins or beads, but some iridescent fiber that drank the lamplight and released it slowly, like a banked ember. From Milo's mattress, the blanket looked exactly like the dome of an observatory. Constellations blossomed across it. A lion, a fish, a winged horse, shapes his mother Helena had shown him in picture books. But every morning the quilt's sky changed. Where the lion had stopped across Milo's knees, a coiled serpent stretched instead. The fish dissolved into a pair of great tusks. Helena assumed Milo was imagining the shifts. No one else saw them. In her eyes, the blanket's pattern was always random pinpricks, beautiful but fixed. She humored her son's excitement, listened while he catalogued the night's new pictures, and blamed the changes on dream logic. "Your mind is the most powerful projector in the world," she told him, brushing his hair from his forehead. "It can paint anything on a ceiling or a quilt." Milo nodded, but he knew better. The stars on his blanket were alive. At first, the nightly rearrangements felt like secret performances staged purely for him, cosmic ballet at a prime seat. He traced the emerging lines with a fingertip, whispering goodnight. Yet after the fifth shift, something else began to arrive. Monsters that stepped from the newly minted constellations when his eyes drooped closed. The first visitor sprouted from the silken hair, which had never been in any star atlas. The hare's tail uncurled into many tails, each ending in a gnashing mouth. Dream Milo sprinted across sand dunes under a violet moon, the hare slithering behind, its mouths barking questions in voices that belonged to his classmates. He woke screaming so loudly Helena ran in clutching a bread knife. The next night, after assurances about bad pizza and nighttime digestion, Milo watched the changed blanket from underneath it rather than atop it. The pattern coalesced into a colossal anglerfish, its lure dripping silver sparks. He tried to stay awake, but sleep ambushed him. The fish appeared underwater this time, lantern glowing, its body fringed with tiny windows. In each window stood someone he knew. Mom, Dad before the divorce, Grandma Gail, knocking against the glass. He woke, gagging on phantom salt water. Morning after morning, Helena found drawing pads littering Milo's room, each page a frantic portrait from the night, the hare with kaleidoscopic mouths, the fish with familial prisoners, a centipede train whose carriages were coffins. The images worried her, but not as much as Milo's exhaustion. Purple bruises of sleeplessness flowered beneath his eyes. The boy who once scaled monkey bars like a jubilant spider now sat in class, chewing his shirt sleeves. At the pediatrician, Milo said nothing. Cheery posters demanded exercise and vegetables. 2 subjects safer than dreams. The doctor prescribed melatonin and fewer screens. The melatonin didn't stop the stars. One Friday, returning from work later than usual, Helena hovered by Milo's door. It was past midnight, but faint light pulsed beneath the frame, rhythmic, deliberate. She eased the door open. The quilt was glowing in time with Milo's heartbeat. Each constellation was a tiny lighthouse, sweeping silver arcs over the walls. When Helena stepped closer, the stars rippled, rearranging, as though embarrassed to be caught changing clothes. She swallowed a scream and closed the door quietly. In her mind, sanity flipped onto its back like a beetle. Now she had seen it. She sat in the living room until dawn, reading articles about sleep hallucinations, electromagnetic interference, the way grief can manifest visually, anything to dock reality where she preferred it. But the next night, the quilt rearranged again, unconcerned with articles. A jagged cluster assembled into what Helena recognized, why, she could not say, as a map. Not a map of stars, but of streets. Streets of their town. Helena took photographs with her phone, but the moment she viewed them, the screen showed only darkness, speckled with dust. That afternoon she drove to her mother, Gail the quilt's maker. Gail's house smelled of sage bundles and cedar shavings. She was sewing when Helena arrived, working metallic thread through a navy mule patch. Helena yanked the project from Gail's hands. "What did you weave into Milo's blanket?" Gail stared calmly. "I wove wishes," she said. "His and mine." "Don't be cryptic. The stars move. They make monsters." At the mention of monsters, Gail flinched. She motioned Helena to the sofa, poured tea that tasted like burnt sugar. "I didn't intend harm," she began. "The technique is old, older than telescopes. It's called night mapping. Every soul is born under a sky arranged just for them. Patterns of possibility. A caretaker can stitch that sky into cloth to keep the child's path clear." Alina remembered her own childhood comforter, a pastel quilt featuring ducklings. It had never moved. "Mine never changed," she said, "because I chose cotton thread. Cotton anchors. Metallic thread is more exploratory." "Mom, my son is being hunted in his sleep." Gail's knuckles whitened. Stars rearrange for two reasons: when a child's path forks, or when something else tries to follow it. Helena heard silverware clatter as her sanity beetle righted itself and started scuttling again. "Something is following Milo?" "Possibilities are not always friendly," Gail said. "The blanket was supposed to light his way, not theirs. Perhaps I sewed it too well." Helena stood. "Undo it." "I can't. The thread is bound to Milo's dreaming. If we tear it, we tear that." Helena drove home, dizzy with knowledge. She placed the quilt in the washing machine, added bleach. When she pulled it out, the fabric smelled hospital clean. Yet silver swirls still blinked themselves into new sequences the moment dusk settled. And that night a creature emerged that wore no recognizable shape, only seams, as though it were a suit waiting for a body. Its voice was the click-click of needles. In the dream, Milo ran through his elementary school. Lockers yawned open, disgorging armloads of graded homework he had never completed. The scene creature flickered through doorways, always closer than physics allowed. When Milo woke, he could still feel thread scritching across his skin like ants. Exhaustion deepened. Helena considered sleeping pills for herself now. Her own dreams had become chase scenes with no prey, only the suspicion of being observed. She also noticed Milo's blanket influencing waking life. Street lamps outside his window assumed star patterns from the quilt. A fox-shaped constellation reflected in puddles even at noon. Every shadow suggested limbs uncoiling. One afternoon she found Milo in his closet, constructing a fort from laundry baskets and textbooks. "They won't find me if I'm off the map," he whispered. Helena gathered him to her chest. "We'll fix this, I promise." Promises required action. She emailed half a dozen sleep specialists. But how could she explain moving stars without being filed under delusional parent? Instead, she sent Gail a final message. "Come tonight. Bring answers." Gail arrived near sunset, a satchel of herbs and spools slung over her shoulder. She spread the quilt on Milo's floor. Stars blinked awake, wary as mice. Gail touched a thread at the corner and winced. "They're bright. That means they're listening." "Good," Helena said. "Let them listen. Stay away from my child." Milo hovered in the doorway, clutching a flashlight. Gail beckoned him, voiced a craftswoman's pride. "Do you want to see how they move?" Terrified yet curious, Milo nodded. Gail handed him a silver needle. "Touch any star," she said. "It will echo what you feel." Milo hesitated, then tapped the brightest cluster. The entire blanket shivered, and before their eyes rearranged into a jittery spiral. At its center bloomed an enormous eye. Milo dropped the needle. Gail sighed. "They're aware of us now. We must bargain." "What can we bargain with?" Helena demanded. "Light? Thread? Dreams," Gail said. "They want to inhabit possibility. We have to give them something richer than—" "Milo!" "No," Helena and Milo said in the same breath. "Not a sacrifice," Gail countered. "An exchange. We create a story so vast so radiant, the followers lose interest in him. They'll migrate, like moths to a bonfire. Milo, clutching the flashlight like a sword, looked between the two women. How do we make a story? By dreaming it together, Gale said. Helena's first instinct was to refuse. Shared dreaming sounded like occult nonsense, but every other solution had failed. She agreed on one condition. She would accompany Milo wherever they went, be his shield. Gale hesitated but finally nodded. They prepared. Gale brewed a tea of chamomile, valerian, and blue vervain. She sprinkled powdered lavender over the quilt until the stars winked pale violet. 3 sleeping bags were arranged in a triangle. Milo's flashlight was placed at the center. Its beam pointed skyward. Gale called it a lighthouse for their return. Helena texted her ex-husband a lie about a camping trip and silenced her phone. The apartment's only illumination came from the quivering stars on the quilt. "Focus on a gate," Gale whispered. All stories begin with a threshold. Milo imagined one. The arched trellis at the community garden where butterflies clustered in August. He inhaled the herbal scent and closed his eyes. Helena followed suit, picturing the same trellis, its lattice flickering with sun. Gale hummed a low vibration that braided itself into their breathing. Sleep took them as gently as an elevator descending. When Helena opened her eyes, she stood on a silver sand beach under a dawn-rose sky. Milo and Gale were beside her. The quilt drifted overhead like a sail, constellations sliding across its surface, scouting. Beyond the surf, a fleet of translucent ships bobbed, each lit from within by impossible colors. Hues with no names in any language. Those were the monsters, Helena realized. Possibilities in search of form. Milo stared at the ships, trembling. They look pretty here. Beauty can be camouflaged, Gale warned. Remember why we're here. Helena turned inland. The trellis Milo had imagined glowed at the edge of palm trees. They walked toward it. Vines unfurled in time-lapse, covering the arch in seconds. Petals opened, releasing tiny sparks that rose like fireflies and joined the quilt's stars. Helena felt the watchers hesitate, curious. "Now we build the bonfire," Gale said. "Spin the best story you can imagine, Milo. Something luminous." Milo chewed his lip. "I'm too tired." "You're braver than you feel," Helena said, kneeling beside him. "Tell them about the comic you're drawing, Captain Comet and the Astro Dogs. Start there." Milo took a breath. Words spilled. Captain Comet in a rocket shaped like an acorn, accompanied by 6 talking dogs who wore helmets with ear holes. They explored planets that smelled like cinnamon, solved puzzles left by extinct dragons, played space soccer with black hole goals. As he spoke, stars slid from the quilt and arranged themselves above the trellis, projecting images in brilliant holograms. The cinnamon planet materialized, a red desert swirling across the sky. Dragon skeletons rose, learned to dance. The astrodogs howled a song that crystallized into rainbow-shot crystals. Solomon, Jupiter Gallery, Uhua, Kwama, a theory. A theory. The translucent ships beyond the surf drifted closer, drawn by the radiance. Helena saw their hulls morph, snatching details, canine silhouettes, comet trails, guitar picks from the dog's theme song. The monsters were sampling the story, remixing themselves. But one ship remained aloof, anchored farther out. It pulsed a color darker than space, every pulse erasing nearby light. Helena sensed malevolence, hunger, unimpressed by cinnamon planets and dancing dragons. The aloof ship wanted something else, perhaps the very act of fear. "Keep going," Helena urged. Milo's voice faltered. Gale stepped in. She added a subplot about Captain Comet rescuing a lonely star who had forgotten how to shine. The star's tears turned into new constellations, each gently landing upon the quilt and knitting themselves into its weft, bright as newborn lanterns. The watchers feasted on this expansion. Even the aloof ship drifted an inch closer. "More," Gale whispered. Helena searched her memory for wonder. She spoke of a library where every book contained tomorrow's possibilities. Readers chose which version of themselves to become. The library's shelves spiraled upward forever like DNA. Milo chimed in, saying the shelves were tended by oversized cats that walked on two legs, wearing suspenders. The dreamscape-obliged cats appeared, reshelving glowing volumes. The aloof ship glided another yard closer, but hesitated still, its dark pulses accelerating. Helena saw why. It thrived on contradictions, gaps in logic. Their joint story had to be airtight or risk collapse. She reeled in an image from her childhood, northern lights ripple painting a rural sky. She told of Captain Comet steering the trellis itself into orbit, using the lights as sails. Milo laughed, weary but delighted. The sails unfurled overhead, shimmering curtains. The dark ship quivered, riddled with cracks now, trying to swallow Aurora while staying dark. It could not manage both. Helena sensed a pivot. Fear could become fascination, given enough wonder. "Grandma, your turn," Milo said. Gale raised both palms. From them flew a skein of silver thread, weaving ladders between constellations. Turning the sky into a harp, wind plopped the ladder strings, producing notes too pure for sadness. The monsters flooded forward. Some shape-shifted into harp strings themselves, vibrating in rapture. Others ballooned into kite-like Medusas, trailing ribbons. The aloof ship split along its spine, releasing a shriek that reeked of rust. From within burst the seam creature Mullen had dreaded, now enormous, its body all inside-out pockets. Bent, it lunged for Milo. Helena threw herself in the way. The creature's pockets engulfed her arms up to the elbows, emptiness, colder than Pluto. She felt her own dreams siphoned, childhood hopes, unborn futures. She screamed for help, voice echoing inside the pockets like marbles down a well. Milo raised the flashlight, the lighthouse from their room. Still clutched in his hand, somehow imported into the dream, he twisted its lens until the beam concentrated into a white spear. He aimed it at the creature's center seam. Light, pure and non-narrative, non-negotiable, blasted through the pocket dimension. The seam creature howled as stitches popped, each pop a gunshot. Blue thread unzipped. The creature folded inward, wrapping itself not around Helena, but around the story. It shrank, becoming a flicker, then a stitch, then nothing. The dark ship imploded, sucked through a pinprick until even its shadow vanished. Silence, except for the harp wind humming above. Helena fell to her knees, sobbing relief. Milo dropped the flashlight. Its beam diffused into ordinary yellow. Gale arrived, eyes shining. "The bargain is complete," she said. "They've taken the story." Around them, the ships, no longer monsters but vessels of possibility, sailed upward. They carried fragments of Captain Comet, astro dogs, harp ladders, and auroral sails. Milky trails marked their departure, etching new constellations across the dawn-rose sky. Helena felt a gentle tug behind her navel, like an elevator ascending now. "Time to go home," she said. They followed the trellis gate back onto the silver beach, where the quilt awaited. One by one they stepped onto it and woke in Milo's bedroom to the soft chirp of pre-dawn birds. The quilt was utterly still. Not dark, not blanket stars remained, but at small, respectful brightness, as if dimmed for daylight. Helena watched for movement. None came. She hugged Milo, then Gale, then Milo again. All three were tear-stained and smiling. Exhaustion existed, but it was clean, like muscles after a long swim. Helena examined the drawings scattered on the desk. The hare with many mouths, the anglerfish, the centipede train still frightening, yet inert now, mere ink. Next to them, Milo had started a new page. Captain Comet and 6 helmeted dogs waving from a rocket Asorn. No monsters lurked behind them. Just stars. For a week, Milo slept the sleep of a hibernating bear. The quilt's constellations remained static. School performance improved. The purple bruises under his eyes faded. On the 7th evening, Helena found Gale in the kitchen, quietly ripping out shining stitches from the unfinished project she'd been sewing. "What will you make now?" Helena asked. "Maybe curtains," Gale said. "Something ordinary." Days turned into months. The quilt never rearranged again. Yet Helena could not bear to leave it in Milo's room. She donated it to the town's historical museum under the label Finch Family Night Map, a non-functional star chart. Visitors admired its workmanship. No one saw the lion or the hare or the map of streets. Gale's silver thread was merely thread under fluorescent lights. Ever so often, late after closing, custodians reported a faint humming from the textile wing, like wind plucking distant harpstrings. They chalked it up to air vents. Milo sometimes missed the moving constellations. He missed even the thrill of fear. Wonders and terrors grew from the same soil. But when he missed them too much, he fetched his pen and added another adventure for Captain Comet. Stories, he learned, were safer when anchored in paper, released to readers instead of monsters. One night, months after the dream, he fell asleep during a meteor shower. A stray beam of starlight slipped through the blinds, landed on the museum's sealed quilt miles away. Just for a moment, one star flickered left, then right, a tiny nod, as though remembering a promise. But it held its place. Outside Milo's window, meteors burned themselves into wishes, none of which needed guiding, monsters to find his dreams anymore.